Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Inspired Afternoons with me, Julie Ali, during this Mubarak month of Ramadan. And next, we're going to be talking to a medical doctor and we're going to hear how we can support the little darlings in our lives that are fasting or whom we are going to encourage to fast during the month of Ramadan. The doctor is Dr. Ayesha Yacoob. She is, as I've indicated, a medical doctor. She practices in Emirates Church, Johannesburg, and I'm truly grateful that she's been able to make time to talk with us this afternoon on this Mubarak fifth day of Ramadan about a very important issue. Assalamu alaikum to you, Aisha. Welcome to the program. Lovely to be talking with you again.
To Julie, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Lovely to be chatting with you again. And of course, it is the Mubarak month of Ramadan. Ramadan Kareem to you and your loved ones. And let's dive right in by asking the all important question. I'm certain you're going to tell me it differs from family to family and from child to child. But typically, what age is fasting appropriate for children? You know.
Yeah, so I see you answered your own question, Auntie Julie. But I think what we need to look at is where the child's at developmentally. Also, maybe, as we reach the age of puberty, a child's going to have to fast. So closer to around where the teenage change comes about, we need to make sure that the child has had some sort of experience with fasting or built up some sort of endurance or the habit of fasting. So you do want to start a bit earlier. And what I'm noticing is that there's a culture of fasting in the madrasas and within the schools, and the kids will talk to each other. Have you started fasting? How many did you keep? So it's a very positive thing, from a young age. However, as you hinted to, there is, well, not a downside, but there are precautions that we need to take. I think that there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with starting off with the younger ones with like a few hours at a time, or what you call a half-day fast, just to keep that enthusiasm, to make them feel like they're part of the Ramadan, the Ramadan celebration as such. But I think if we're going to allow our younger ones to fast, we have to make sure that we are supporting them appropriately. And by support, I mean nutritional support, supporting sleeping patterns, making sure that they're eating the correct things at Sehri and at Iftar, and making sure that they're well hydrated.
So, Aisha, you've just mentioned the magic word a while ago in your response to me, development. So, here I think we need to be discussing physical, emotional, and developmental factors. Parents do need to consider this before encouraging preteens and adolescents to start fasting. How do they broach that? I know what you also mentioned was the half a day fast or a few hours. And perhaps parents should also introduce some sort of reward system. But development does play a huge role here, doesn't it? Depending on the child's, maturity level as well.
Sure, absolutely. So it's with all I'm a mom of two boys myself, and with everything, it's always about that balance. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out myself for the most part, but you want to encourage them, but you want to encourage them, and you don't want to enforce it. You want it to be a thing where they imbibe it, and it doesn't have to be punitive. I think for the very much younger ones, there can be a sort of incentivized system where if you keep this amount of fast, this is what you could get. But we often tie it to material things, and then we need to consider: are we tying the fast to do something like material, like a monetary reward, and is this the messaging we want to start off with? However, even in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala gives us these incentives and gives us these rewards and gives us things to look forward to. So by nature we are these type of Allah Ta'ala understands our psyche, and we are incentive driven. Something that could be nice, which is not necessarily for the fast itself, but for the much younger ones, is I've seen a few moms do a little bit of a treat a day. So the child would do something, either it's, and here we're talking the much younger children, either it's a bit of fasting or extra prayer or just engaging with the overall activities or spirit of Ramadan, and they get a little envelope at the end of the day. One of my cousins showed me she'd put a little notebook or a little treat. This is for the much younger ones. However, I think as our young people, like if you're moving towards 9 or 10 or 11 or the teenage years, so the 12, 13, 14, I think here is where young people need to realize that we are fasting for a reason, and to understand the intent behind the fasting and the importance of it. So it's not as though you're fasting for material reward. You're fasting for the spiritual element of it. And when we initially spoke about this discussion, I said we have to approach it from a multidisciplinary perspective. We need to look at what our psychologists are saying about fasting, about the challenges that our young people have with maintaining or with keeping the fast during these times. We need to look at the spiritual element. So what do we need to emphasize from a spiritual element? We need to look at the nutritional element. So I can touch on a few of these, Auntie Julie, if you want me to in the beginning, and maybe in time you can delve into it a bit more with the subject experts. Would you like me maybe to talk a little bit about the nutrition?
Oh, absolutely. I'm also thinking here regarding the type of nutrition, and we do know that our kids have very demanding days at
Yes.
school,
So,
and that's just the academic side. But what about those kids that are involved in sport? And most schools are,
absolutely.
of course, a sporting activity or two is now almost compulsory in the schooling system. So how does that impact, and how do we support the kids during sporting activities? We can't be saying to them, you don't have to fast today, because we're
Oh,
giving very, the messages that we're going to give them is going to be very, it's almost like we're very relaxed about fasting, and we don't take it seriously enough, and we don't attach any spirituality to it. So think about all of that. Aisha, we're going to take an ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two. So lots for you to respond to,
sure,
inshallah.
Auntie Julie, sure.
It's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying, or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
For the first time, I can dream again.
The Africa Muslims Agency Orphan Hope Program provides the food, clothing, and basic support needed by thousands of children across the world. Every child deserves a chance at a hopeful future.
For 50,000 trans, you can transform our lives with the AMA Orphan Hope Program.
Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Use the black seed, for indeed it is a cure for every disease except death." This Ramadan, honor that guidance. Tip Black Seed supports your blood sugar during fasting, boosts immunity, sustains your energy from suhoor to iftar. Available at leading pharmacies. Tip Black Seed, your golden drop every day.
Elite Basmati, Available throughout the Middle East, and now for the very first time, exclusive to South Africa. Brought to you by Murchison Spice, Pietermaritzburg's most famous specialty store. Elite Basmati, available in aromatic white and golden cellar, is packaged in a world-class facility in India and is filled with wholesome goodness for your well-being. Elite Basmati rice by Murchison Spice. For trade inquiries, contact Mohammed on 033 387 2121. Murchison Spice.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Welcome back. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is, of course, the Inspired Afternoons right here on Salam Media with me, Julie Ali. And inshallah, these programs will carry on throughout the month of Ramadan. And after that, we'll go back to our normal and usual timetable, inshallah. We are talking the month of Ramadan with a medical doctor, and that is, of course, you, Dr. Ayesha Yacoob. She's based in Emirates, Johannesburg, and we're very pleased that she was able to make some time for us on the show today to talk about fasting, adolescents and teens and preteens, of course, and how we broach the subject of fasting with them. And Aisha also mentioned in the course of the conversation, it's not only about the fast. We need to bring in the spiritual aspect of it as well. This is our opportunity to educate our children about Islam very holistically. Over to you, Dr. Ayesha Yacoob.
Sure, Santijali, thanks for giving me some time to also think about how to address it. So I'll give you an example. So my 9-year-old he has a cricket match today. He wanted to do the cricket match, and it's going on till 5:30 this afternoon. But he goes into this with an enthusiasm around fasting. And I think that is developed by the environment, yes, the home environment, the madrasa environment. So he wants to go into it. He wanted to fast today. And I did, because he's only 9, I left the option open to say, if you're really not managing, it's okay to break your fast. But I know that he wants to, and he will push himself. But he must know that at this age, he has an option to break his fast if he's not managing. And this is why I said we should start earlier so that it becomes an incremental increase to the point where when they have to, and it's compulsory for them to fast, they're not caught off guard. For instance, you say when you come up to your high schoolers, and again, I've got a high schooler who's fasting now. And yes, indeed, sometimes I think their schedules are a little more hectic than our schedules, and the demands on them are sometimes a bit more hectic. So hopefully the idea is that by the time they come to this age of maturity where the fast becomes compulsory, they would have built up some sort of a habit and developed some sort of love or appreciation for fasting. So how do they manage these hectic schedules? And I mean, they're going to look at us and how we push through with the day, and we have to prioritize what we need to prioritize. And I think maybe a bit of a consciousness around this makes a difference. And what I like to mention to my kids is that the fast is about discipline. So within this day, there's a limited amount of time, and you've got to see where you're going to prioritize your energies and where you're going to prioritize your time. So your mental energies, your physical energies, and what can give way so that you have more time for this fast, for some of the religious duties that come with Ramadan. I mean, you've got the aspect of Taraweeh as well. And my young one's very enthusiastic about Taraweeh. But the next day, school. So what do you do about that? And I think it's a negotiation while maintaining that enthusiasm, or even if the enthusiasm is not there, to create the enthusiasm around it. Something that we've done with Maulana Muhammad Kola and the Ummahat group is we are doing Ramadan arts and crafts. And what we did this Sunday was we did a vision board where there was a bit of a discussion around what elements you want to bring into your Ramadan. So as a family, and this is ideal, I mean, if you could sit down and just prioritize how you're going to shape the month, because it's also a bit of planning goes a long way. And this is what the preteens need to know. I then look at the demands of teens doing sport during this time. And of course, as we know, as you're younger, if you really need to break the fast, you can. But as you move towards the age of maturity, they need to be geared up for it. So this is where a discussion around appropriate nutrition comes in. So what are we going to eat for suhoor? What are we going to eat for sehri? Are we going to eat a quick burn foods that give us high energy spikes and dips, or are we going to take the opportunity to learn about what gives us sustained energy, and such as your slow release carbohydrates, your proteins. Same for iftar. So if my boys feel a bit hungry on one or two of the fasts, I would ask them to reflect on what they'd had for iftar or what they'd had for sehri, and whether this is appropriate in terms of giving them what they need to draw from through the day. So get them involved in thinking about what they're putting into their body so that it can sustain them through this fast. I don't know if that answers some of your questions.
Absolutely. As you were responding to me, Aisha, what came to mind is we don't realize what a golden opportunity we are being handed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding our children and the learning, the teaching that goes into the month of Ramadan. Because at that tender age, whether they preteens, teens, or even adolescents, here is an opportunity to talk about discipline. It's to talk about respect. It's to talk about forgiveness. It's to talk about planning. It's to talk about visualizing. You spoke about a vision board, and it just excited me so much
we can do one together. And Julie, I've got some spare cardboard and crafts.
Wow,
we can
absolutely. Absolutely. Because imagine in the month of Ramadan, you get a whole group of friends and family together and you work on this vision board of yours. There is so much for them to work towards till the end of Ramadan, and post that. I am just thinking how we're helping them build their character during the month of Ramadan. So respond to that as well, or comment on what I've just said. But also the other concern is the issue around some moms. I suppose there's very anxious moms, the warriors. They just want the best for their children all the time. And that's not suggesting that they don't want the children to fast, but they worry about, is my child going to be able to concentrate at school? What is his or her mood going to be like? Is it going to impact on their performance, sport-wise and academically? So that's a kind of a fine line, is that not?
Sure. So interestingly, as I was preparing for this, there's an actual academic study where they queried students' response times to quizzes or tests, and what they found was the fast itself wasn't a factor in how students performed. It was rather the glucose spikes and dips.
Okay.
So if we have a sustained release of energy, this should be fine. We just need to make sure we're supporting them in the mornings and we're supporting them in the evenings from this perspective. But of course, there will be fatigue. I mean, we're waking up for sehri. You can see the dark lines under my eyes. You have your broken sleep, right?
Yes.
So yes, it is an issue. I think for the younger ones, if we are in schools where they don't understand the demands of fasting, it becomes an opportunity for us to speak to the teachers, or for the kids to speak to the teachers about fasting. When you go into the more senior grades, I mean, I think that we can't shift around the fact that the fast is compulsory. You know what I mean? Like so we have certain high demand jobs as adults, you know, and we've got to fast. When it's compulsory on you, it's compulsory on you, and you've got to see how to shift everything else in your life accordingly. So maybe you're talking about matriculants, you're talking about grade 11s, you know. I think we've got to see how we are going to do it, making the fast the non-negotiable, and supporting everything around that. So that's my opinion on it. I mean, I don't have kids who are older, or you know, in those years where you think it's this make or break kind of a year, you know. But I thought to myself, and I was reflecting on this last night during Taraweeh, and I know my son had a maths test today, and I thought, I'm keeping him up so late tonight, you know. But then I thought to myself, this Ramadan comes once a year, you know. What are we gearing them up for in the bigger picture? Sure, a maths test will impact on your, you know, your academic performance, or, you know, eventually what university or what career, you know. But what about the spiritual training? And we know that Ramadan is our training ground for the rest of the year, right? So what you put into Ramadan often shapes how your year plays out in terms of your sort of spiritual bank that you're pouring into. It's what you can draw from, you know, as life resumes. So I had to make a conscious decision to say that we're going to allow them this opportunity to be at the masjid, to do Taraweeh prayers, because it's building them in as much a way as the academics are building them for the future, if not on a greater level, you know.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And obviously, Ramadan is also one of the pillars, the 5 pillars of, you know, us as Muslims, that we have to, as Muslims, observe those pillars. And really, as you and I are engaging this afternoon, I just realize what a big responsibility this is, and rightly so, on the shoulders of the parents. Because if we find that the kids don't, you know, take Ramadan very lightly and think that they can skip as they, you know, wish, and one day off, one day on, or you know, take it in their stride in a very flippant manner, then I think we as parents are to blame for it, because from a very early age we should be inculcating all these very, very beautiful and very firm lessons of Ramadan, and the beauty of Ramadan, the beauty of the rewards of Ramadan, and what the month actually signifies. It's not a month of hunger, it's really a month of new beginnings. So it's really up to us as parents. But let's now flip over to the medical side with about 5 minutes to wrap up time. Aisha, when do you suggest parents seek medical advice?
Okay,
When the,
it's
yeah,
an important
carry on.
question. It's an
Carry on.
important question, Auntie Julie, because you know, sometimes also we teach ourselves, well, we ourselves, and we teach our children to just push through discomfort, you know. But it's important to watch out for, like, what we call red flags or warning signs. One of these will be like signs of dehydration. So, for instance, a lot of lethargy when a child is very lethargic, perhaps when a child's urine is very dark. That could indicate dehydration. Headaches that are not subsiding once you break your fast and you've started, you know, with your iftar. What else to look out for, importantly, is this maintained or sustained lethargy. Also look towards abdominal issues like abdominal cramping. Sometimes that's like your stomach cramps that are quite severe, over and above like what could be thought of as hunger pangs. So for instance, if a child is predisposed to like increased acid or maybe a stomach ulcer, the longer hours of fasting could tip you over into maybe excessive acid or gastric ulcer. Look into that. But I think we can avoid all this if we just support ourselves and our young ones on either end through the suhoor and through the iftar in terms of nutrition. I would recommend adding some electrolytes to the water that you're drinking. Sometimes your standard dehydration electrolytes. I know that the coconut water contains quite a few natural electrolytes, a little bit of salt. Himalayan dash of Himalayan salt maybe in your water. What else could we do? Your proteins. Get in as much proteins as you can. I think our diet is subcontinent diet. We like to do our fries and our savories, which, if prepared the right way, are not entirely bad. But make sure we are getting our proteins in there. If we can do eggs in the morning for breakfast, that would be great. So we're supporting our young people on either end, so that we don't have these medical or nutritional issues coming up.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Dr. Ayesha Yacoob, really appreciate the time you've made available for us. In fact, we're going to have to try and pin you down for a couple of more shows during this month or when you are free, because we also would like to explore the issue around, I think, all right, I think let me talk to you off air. I just kind of slipped my mind the one important thing I did want to bring up with you, and that was perimenopause and menopause going forward. But my producer, my producer will be in touch. But it was lovely talking with you, and I'm going to take you up on the offer regarding the vision board, because I think it's such a fun time, but also the outcomes can be so very positive. So
and
keep us in
Ramadan's
your
celebration, right, Auntie Julie? It's a celebration.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Allah accept all your du'as and keep us in your du'as as well. Go well, and assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
That was Dr. Ayesha Yacoob, a medical doctor, talking to us about our children and our preteens, helping them through the month of Ramadan. And we're hoping to pin it down for a few more shows to talk about medical matters. It is exactly 4 o'clock, and we are now going to be joined by Maulana Ismail Musa. He is the educator at IPSI Comparative Religion, based in KZN. So stay with us for the next half hour at least.